Let's get it!
Broadcasting to you from a little grass shack in the middle of the Pacific.
Live in the place to be.
Well, they're actually in the Bay Area.
Yeah!
But they are the premier Pacifica show that shines a spotlight on positive Pacific Islanders.
You listening to the sound.
Role models coming brown every Thursday night at 6.
East to west, we getting hurt.
Brought to you by Pacifica by Design. It's the iconic Faika podcast with your hosts, Naki and Carl.
Well, here we go. It's not Naki and Carl. You can see the pink headphones over there, but that is not Naki. This is our both. She's wearing two hats today, although you can't see a hat on her. She's wearing two hats. She's our co-host, and she is also our guest. Leah Fa'aleava is Afakasi Samoan and grew up in Eugene, Oregon. She completed her undergraduate studies at Oregon State University, majoring in ecological and sustainable horticultural. In 2022, she graduated from UC Davis with a master's degree in community development. Her research thesis was titled Exploring Food Literacy Among Samoans in the Bay Area. We're going to talk in depth about that and her actual thesis. In addition to working full-time for UC Berkeley, she also writes and manages grants for Pacifica by Design. She is our grant writer on our staff. We will talk to her about that as well. Her current passion is finding furniture on the side of the road or other places, but the side of the road works, hauling it home and transforming it into something new. Proceeds from many of the pieces she flips are donated to causes that she believes in. We'll talk about that too. To see her work, you can find her on IG at Flip It Girl. That is flip_it_girl. That's with a U, not an I. Welcome, Leah.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Leah's a little nervous sitting in for Naki. I could see that, but she's going to fill those headphones out well. She's going to do just fine. Can't wait to talk to her about a lot of the things that we just described. This is season 8, episode 7. I'm checking in with my producer, and he's nodding his head. You would think after a couple hundred shows, we'd be able to figure out what episode that we're on in the season, but we continue to struggle with that. Today, we've got community announcements. We have a bunch of community announcements, so it's nice to see the PI community getting back out there and doing so many things that we can't get to all of them. So we're going to talk about that, and we have our check-ins, and then Leah's going to talk about being a grant writer for us. She is also going to talk about the journey she's on right now. I think she's a few months away from the end of that journey, and the research she did. Obviously, we're going to spend a lot of time on that, and we'll talk about Flip It Girl as well. So, Leah, welcome.
Hello. Thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
It's always ladies first here, and we're not going to break that. So Naki will, usually just talk about what she's got going on in her life in the week, and I'll do the same. I will toss it over to you. What's going on in your life? I know there's a lot going on, but I'll throw it out there and see what you want to share.
Oh, you're going to make me go first?
Ladies first.
My week was good. I'm today marks 6 months pregnant, which is a big deal. It's been quite a journey to get this far. A little bit of the backstory is I had to do like 3 rounds of IVF, and anybody that's out there that's done IVF knows that it's a very difficult process, physically, emotionally, mentally, financially. And we got pregnant on the 3rd round, which is fantastic. And then I was really sick from like week 6, really sick. And I went to the doctor and I was like, something's not right. And they're like, oh, you have this very rare thing called hyperemesis gravidarum, which only less than 3% of the women get. And it's just
Hyperemesis gravidarum?
Hyperemesis gravidarum, or HG. And it's just there's a lot severe vomiting, dehydration.
Oh man.
Yeah, I spent my New Year's Eve in the ER hooked to an IV. But this pregnancy journey has been very interesting because I've learned a lot about women's health.
First time, right?
First time.
First time being pregnant.
Yeah, I've learned that just maybe 20% of the insurance companies out there will cover IVF. So most women don't have access to fertility care. And then with this hyperemesis gravidarum, they don't know anything about it, so they don't really know how to manage it. So they've got me on medications, which helps somewhat, but I'm still sick every day. It's getting better, but it's just interesting to see the lack of support of women's healthcare in this country. I think we need more women in science. So if you're a woman and you're interested, please go study
Yeah, and if
in
there
the science field.
if there are kids out there, young girls, young ladies that would like to do that, there is a STEM Pie Fest event this weekend. We'll talk about that in our community events. But you're right. I think that not having enough people there probably puts things in a maybe not the correct perspective because there's not enough women in it. So it's crazy how much funding there is for different things, but there isn't for IVF and
Or
you know,
or it seems like research around hormones, because women have suffered from morning sickness and this HG for decades, and they don't know anything about it. And I'm not sure why, but I'm curious. Maybe it's because there's not enough women in science or enough interest in funding that kind of research. So yeah,
it's kind of interesting how medicine has become somehow it became a man's, I always look at pregnancy, right? For thousands, maybe, I don't know, millions. I don't know how long the human race has been around, but women have been the ones giving birth and managing birth, right? Midwives, though it's a lady's process. And somewhere in there in the last 150 years, we decided to monetize it, and somehow men became, the doctor that's going to deliver children. And somehow the focus ends up not being where it needs to be because situations like this develop. But we were always taken care of by the ladies,
yeah.
by the women, and somehow men became the doctors. And I don't know if it's a money thing or if it's just a societal thing, but I think you're right. More women need to be at that table making those decisions.
Yeah, I mean, when I go to the doctor, they just say, "Oh, it's hormones, but nobody really knows what that means." So, anyways, 6 months, 3 left. Looking forward to this being over with.
You ready to be not pregnant?
Yes, I'm ready to feel normal and good and get back to life. So that managing is just a full-time job. But I am able to do some things. Like we saw each other last Friday. We went to Samoan class, which was pretty
We went
great.
to the Puna Oleola in Stockton. Their first round of the Samoan language and culture classes, but not the Fa'aleava's first round of these classes. And it's our second time. We've been lucky enough to be in attendance twice. Any thoughts with the bigger class? There's more people at this one, and I think it's a little bit wider of a variety of than what we saw in San Francisco in 2019. But anything different that you see?
Well, it's really nice to have these classes and just community events outside of the Bay.
Mm-hmm.
Because everything is kind of focused in San Francisco, a little bit in the East Bay. So it's just really nice to get to expand that geographically, and lots of kids in the class. I don't remember that many kids in the first round, or the first round that we did. So it's really nice to see the younger generation, because I know that language and culture gets diluted more and more every generation. So it's really good to see that interest.
Yeah, there was a point where we were going around introducing ourselves to the class, and the class was answering back, and it was written up there. And this isn't like a 2 or 3 word sentence. I mean, this is a whole interactive introducing yourself formally to the class, and the class is answering back formally. And there was a little girl, you probably know who I'm talking about. She was sitting behind you.
Amalia, yeah. That's
Amalia.
Ty's little niece or little cousin.
And she was sitting there, and I think it was her dad was like, "Oh, go ahead." And I was thinking,
Her uncle, yeah.
Her uncle was like, "Go ahead." And I was like, wow, 1, that's so far away. I don't know if she could even see it. And 2, is she going to, man, she jumped in, swung the bat, was ready to go, spoke with confidence. It was awesome to see. I mean, I think she won over the whole class. The whole class was like, all right, if she's doing it, I can go ahead and take a shot.
She's
at
lucky. She gets private lessons with
Yes, she
Ty's
does.
mom every week. I think they were doing so. Good for her. Good for her
She's ahead of
family
both of
for
us.
getting her into that. It's amazing.
Yeah, so good to see. These are, I think tomorrow will be week 3. It's an 8-week course. And from what I can tell, it looks like the church will be doing another round. It's kind of at this point, there is the need for it from the community standpoint. So if you're not in this one and you would like to, it's in area code 209. It's in Stockton. It's in the Valley. Very reachable if you're in Sacramento, if you're in the Delta, or further down the valley in like Modesto or so. But good to see. Good to see. We definitely benefited from that on our trip to Samoa. We actually left the class mid-class and headed off to Samoa in 2019. I think we'll see some of the pictures later that you took on that trip in Samoa. So good to see. I'm glad that it's at least better, right? The journey is more tolerable, I guess, at this point, but you got your finish line in view. Are you excited about not being pregnant?
I'm very excited about not being pregnant. You have no idea. Like I said, I'm in survival mode, just trying to get through each day. Luckily, I'm doing a little bit better now. I started, we'll talk about it, but I finally got to get back to flipping after month 4 or 5, and spending more time at work. I've taken more time off work than I meant to. So
you got something kind of important going on, though.
yeah.
That's a good reason to not be at work.
Yeah.
All right. So let's see. My check-in for the week, I don't really have much other than I used to make fun of everybody wearing Crocs. I was like, those are the ugliest things in the world. I don't see how they're plastic. How could they be comfortable? I don't even see any padding in there. I'm just a tennis shoe wearing guy, or slippers, right? And, I just didn't ever see it. And I would make fun of my wife because she wears them everywhere. And, secretively to myself, I would make fun of everybody else that's wearing them. And I was at church, not this past Sunday, but the Sunday before, and my feet were cold. And I was like, what? Is everybody else's feet cold? And I looked down to see what everybody else is wearing. I just hadn't looked when I was at church. Everybody's wearing Crocs with socks on. Their feet are nice and warm. And I was like, all right, I'll go ahead and try them. Do you have Crocs?
I have not converted to the Croc trend. No, I don't know if I will, but
good for you. Don't get them. I will tell you that if I never got them, I wouldn't know. They're pretty dang comfortable. I mean, I'm wearing them right now. I'm wearing them to church. Yeah. So I don't know if I'm a convert, but I'm not making fun of people anymore that are.
Are you getting
Crocs.
the little accessories they have?
I don't know about any of that.
I'm gonna get you some of those.
I'll probably wear them. Oh my gosh. I was sitting next to your husband at church and was telling him the same story. I'm like, I just said, well, what's everybody wearing? And I saw everybody was wearing Crocs, and he was like, are those comfortable? You like those? And so I don't know if he was just being nice to me or if he's thinking of buying a pair too. But for you Croc wearers, I guess I'm a believer. They are comfortable. Oddly enough, they don't look comfortable. They still don't look comfortable. I look at them in the house when I don't have them on, and I walk by and I look at them and I say they still don't look comfortable. They don't look, I don't know. They definitely don't look stylish.
Well, I like that they have some ventilation. You can wear socks or you don't have to wear socks, but some people's feet get hot, and all those little holes provide some ventilation.
They're comfortable. They're not hot, not cold. So I am a believer in Crocs, and it'll be interesting when I get into when it's warmer, because I'm slippers. I am all about the slippers.
Well, they're versatile, so
yeah. So when it gets warmer, I don't know if I'm gonna stay in the Crocs or if I go back to the slippers, but it's cold enough now. And I'm sure anybody who's watching this, it has a real winter and not a California winter, is probably thinking, you get to choose between slippers and Crocs. Like it's 40 below or wherever. So I guess it's all relative. So we're going to do community announcements. And by we, I mean, I'm going to do community announcements because Naki, I think she's actually in the air as we speak. She's coming back from San Diego. So I'm going to take a deep breath. I'm going to read real fast and get through our community announcements. All right. So experience the return of season 8 for 2024 Stag Elite's Big Man Camp at City College of San Francisco. Kickstart your off season with Stag Elite every Saturday, running now to June 29th from 9 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. Secure your spot by registering at stagelite.org. Don't miss the opportunity to elevate your game. Siu Fofonga Ole Moana, a Pacifica choir, is taking place every Tuesday and Thursday from 6 to 7 p.m. at the Samoan Community Development Center in San Francisco. To register, simply scan the QR code or visit SCDC's page for more information. All My Usos and Fatasi brings you Malanga Through Healing, Family Art Night happening March 21st from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Once again, that's at SCDC in San Francisco. First 50 attendees will get $50 gift cards. Let me read that again. The first 50 attendees are going to get a $50 gift card. Register by clicking the link in their bio. Samoan language and culture classes that Leah and I were talking about earlier. Puna Oleola Church invites you to enroll in their first Samoan language and culture classes. They started on February 23rd and will go to April 12th in Stockton. We will have a graduation showcase. Look for that. Enrollment costs were $100 and $50 for high school students and younger. And there were a lot, like Leah said, there were a lot of younger kids there. Spaces are limited, so reserve your spot at puna.efkas@gmail.com. Join All My Usos for Famalosi, Building a Better Mind and Body. Free class Tuesdays from 5:30 to 7 p.m. They'll be teaching Tahitian dance, song, and drumming while expanding your knowledge of mental health resources. Free Tahitian dance lessons. That's what those are. Limited space available. Secure your place now by clicking the link in their bio. Samoan Solutions presents Lumina'i Education Gift and Lumina'i Art Gift Awards. San Francisco Bay Area students of Samoan descent in grades 6 through 12 can apply for financial support towards education and mixed media art. Check the flyer for all the qualifications. Deadline to apply is Friday, April 19th. Apply today, once again, through the link in their bio, and follow Samoan Solutions for updates. We had talked about if young ladies want to get into the STEM field, and we had said, hey, there's an event coming up. It is this Saturday. PyFest presents their third annual Pacifica STEM Fair from 1 to 5 p.m. It's a free event for everybody. Once again, that is free. Join them for a fun day of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics through a Pacifica lens. There will be hands-on STEM activities, raffle prizes, lunch will be provided, and so much more. Please register by clicking the link in their bio, and that will be hosted by yours truly and Epi Almavai from Samoan Solutions. Naki has some things going on that's taking her away from that event. So thank you, Epi, for stepping up and filling in. Pacific Islander Community Partnerships is excited to lift the voices of Pacifica women wave makers on March 27th from 8:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. This is a free event happening in Redwood City, California. Scan the QR code on the flyer or go to their IG and click on the link in the bio. There's a theme here. Click on the link in the bio. The 6th annual Polynesian Heritage Awards. It's awesome that they've been able to run this, and it's the 6th time already. Still seems new. Brought to you by Pacific Islander Community Partnerships, PICP, is happening on Saturday, May 4th at 5 p.m. in South San Francisco Recreation Banquet Hall. General admission tickets are on sale now. We can't wait to celebrate and honor our Polynesian community together as we kick off Pacific Islander Heritage Month. Click the link in their bio to purchase the tickets. Those tickets will sell out. I promise you, they sold out last year and they're going to sell out this year. I believe the VIP tickets are already sold out. So don't wait. Don't hesitate. Go get those the tickets. It is a great event and extremely well run by the Onawai family. So those are our community announcements. So at this point, this is where we have Leah is going to take off her hat of the host hat, and she's going to put on her hat of the guest. And we are going to talk about your thesis that you did at UC Davis. And you're going to walk us through that. And I'm going to interject questions as we go, but I'm going to turn it over to you and let you kind of take us through. Yeah. So before we do that, because Leah's looking at me going, hey, what are you doing? We already talked about this. We did. We do want to talk about Flip It Girl, because this is something that has allowed you to support things that you believe in. Multiple times. I think there's been multiple times you've been able to use the funds and the resources that you've gotten from that. You've been able to kind of expand and use your creativity and do things. You always talk about doing things we love, right? Follow your passion. You've been able to do that with Flip It Girl. And then you're starting to hit some events too. So talk to us a little bit about the Flip It Girl journey. How did you end up, like Naki said, because she's the one that wrote the bio. How do you end up going on side of the road and picking up stuff and bringing it home and making it look pretty?
Well, I grew up in Eugene, Oregon, which is a hippie liberal town. So I was surrounded by upcycling, recycling, thrifting, reusing, repurposing. It was just kind of values that were deeply instilled in me from a very young age. So thrifting and buying secondhand, it was not so much out of a financial need, but just more out of a lifestyle and being just aware of your individual impact on the environment. So I've always done things with recycled materials. Even when I was young, I remember hauling a dresser from the side of the road, painting it and using it as my bedroom furniture. It wasn't very pretty. I didn't know what I was doing, but I did it.
It probably looked better than it did on the side of the road.
Well, yeah. But yeah, I think most of my life, my creative outlet was dancing. And then when COVID hit in 2019, the studios shut down. I stopped dancing and I needed a new creative outlet. And at the same time, I was preparing my house to put for sale on the market, and I needed to kind of flip it. And I had a bunch of old furniture in there, and I just I think one of my first projects was taking a shelf and a box, and I tried to make a coffee table, and it was just hideous. It was so bad. I think I have pictures of it somewhere. And anyways, I think one day I was just scrolling through Facebook and I came across this flipper, Maggie McGo, and I just binged on her page. Like, she broke down the steps, she showed the supplies, she showed the transformation process. I became completely hooked. And I went out a few days later, got some supplies and started experimenting. And it's now my new creative outlet. I don't really dance anymore. It's like my form of therapy. I have like a very short attention span, but I can do a 3-day holiday weekend in my workshop, not talk to anybody, and like it'll fly by and I'll be like, oh my God, I have to go back to work already. Where did the time go? So I like black out and get in my zone, and it feels amazing. But then I have to emerge and be like, oh man, my back hurts, my wrist hurts. Like, what have I done all weekend? Because I'm just in the zone.
So is it headphones on, or is it just engrossed in the physical work? Like, are you distracted at all from it, or are you just engrossed physically?
I mean, I have my batch of podcasts I binge, and then music or just silence. Sometimes I just like, I'm a very introverted person, so just sometimes silence, but it's like it's the transformation process that fascinates me. And then that it's a field, it's an art that you just never stop learning from. And I always say, like, because people are like, how did you learn how to do this? And I say, well, by trial and error, but mostly error. Like, you make a lot of mistakes and you learn from those mistakes. And then the flipping community on social media is really helpful. Like, it's a nice, supportive community. You know, social media, like especially on TikTok, people can be pretty brutal in general, but the flipping community is really supportive. And so I draw a lot of inspiration from that. But then my work is a lot different than it's a very white dominated field of art. And so my stuff is very different. It's pretty bold. It's colorful. I use a lot of patterns and textures. And then I love using Pacifica designs. And even I saved, my in-laws gave me some follow that was not nice enough to be presented anymore. So I saved it from the trash, and I can kind of upcycle that stuff and still put it to use.
You got that. It's a famous wall.
Well, yeah,
It's
my
a famous
famous
wall.
my claim to fame is the TikTok wall I did while I was working on my thesis. I flipped it for my husband, who's an orator, and I put his tools up there and presented them nicely. And that's probably my most viewed video on TikTok.
Yeah. So you walk in the Faleava house, and you have these PhD kind of document on your left, and you have a master's document over there, and then you've got this orator wall, and you just know you're in a house with somebody's. They are. It's an amazing feel when you go in the house, and you're gonna have a little one running around there pretty soon. So it's an amazing journey to have seen you. I always talk about this, how you inspire me, because when I met you, you were like, oh, I'm shy, and I'm an introvert, and like I think 2 months after you were in Samoa with all of us and with people you barely knew, and we were running around flying from Tutuila to Apia, taking a boat it was so, to me and Naki, we were like, she keeps talking about her being shy and introverted, and you're like going halfway around the world with people you just met, and to see you at the point that you're at now, with a family, you finished your master's degree, you're about to be a mom, you're an entrepreneur. So seeing that and this is like 4 or 5 years, to see that growth is inspiring for those around you. So just know that people who see what you're doing are very inspired by that. So to have Flip It Girl be as successful as it is, and then so what are some of the things that you've been able to support because of that?
Yeah, it's also my form of activism and just doing my part in the world, making the world a better place by saving stuff from the landfill. And then let's see, I've donated to, it's called Sister Web. They're like a women of color doula or birth support. I've given to UC Davis Pacific Islander graduation ceremony, the Samoan and language classes in Stockton, Utopia Seattle. I did a Pride piece June, a couple years ago. Yeah, I think there's a couple others I can't remember, but
yeah. So, and that, to be able to use your passion, right, to be able to do things and support movements and things that you believe in, just another reason to look and go, wow, look what Leah's doing. You're also finding us money. How do you do that for us?
Oh, grant writing. Yeah, I think my grant writing journey started in high school. Well, it started with scholarship applications. I really hated high school. And so senior year, I started hanging out with college people. My friends were people who were in college, and I would just hear them talk all the time about debt, student loan debt and loans, and the stress, and I thought, I don't ever want to deal with that at all. Like, it almost deterred me from going to college. But instead I was like, well, I heard something about scholarships. Let me look into that. So I started applying to every scholarship I could find. And I managed to I think I mostly covered my full tuition for my bachelor's. But those applications, and there's a lot of them, but they're similar to like the process of grant writing. Those applications I would send to my mom, who would help me edit for content. And then I would send them to my Aunt Carrie. So shout out to my mom and my Aunt Carrie, who is an editor by trade, like technical editor. And she would, send me back my applications just full of red marks.
Splash with red.
Yeah, which was good because I'd go through them and I'd learn from them. And again, learning from your mistakes, right? And then over the years, I would just kind of refine my writing process. And then years later, I did a 1-year graduate program at University of Oregon for nonprofit management. And one of the required classes for that program was a grant writing class in which they partnered with a foundation. And so there's 40 students in the class, and we each had to pick our favorite local nonprofit. Then we would have to write a grant and present it to the class. And then the winner got to give the nonprofit a $15,000 grant. So I wrote a grant. I did my elevator pitch. I presented it to the class. And out of 40 students, I won the $15,000 grant for it was the school to garden. Is that right? Farm to school program. School garden project. Sorry.
And you're kind of in that.
Yeah.
In
So
that genre
was, and I did an internship with them, and that's where, you go to the public schools, you help build beds, you teach the kids how to plant vegetables or harvest. And then we'd go into the kitchen and, have them do recipes with just getting them familiar with healthy foods and stuff. So, but what was really cool about that class was, that it was, first of all, that was the highlight of my graduate school, was being able to be on the other side of funding or grant writing and being able to hand a nonprofit that you love a $15,000 check. And then later that check was matched by another grant from the USDA times 4. So $15,000 turned into $60,000 for an awesome program. And that was just thrilling. So I think it was in the first round of Samoan language and culture classes in San Francisco that you and Naki walked up to me with a this thick of a federal grant. I'm not at the federal grant level, like that's above my level, but I think you guys were like, this is due next week. Can you write it for us? And I was like, whoa.
We had no idea, right? So we're just, I don't know, we got turnips in our hair. We're like, hey, this sounds like a good idea. Let's just go take to Leah and say, can you do this by like Thursday next week?
Yeah, I don't even know how you guys knew I had written grants, but I looked at it and I asked some people who I know who are grant writers, and they're like, yeah, you need like months to write this. And
not a week.
But that's kind of, when I aligned myself with you guys, because it was like, oh, okay, I have a skill I can offer these guys, but also your mission was so important to me, because growing up in Eugene, Oregon, there's no Samoans, there's no Pacific Islanders. I didn't have brown role models.
I could see, nobody to look at.
We're talking like 80-90% white population. So when I found you guys, or when we found each other, I was just like so excited because your work was just so meaningful to me, because I needed it when I was little. So I was like, okay, this is a perfect cause for me, because young brown kids need to see these role models.
Yeah, I remember so the first interview we go into, it's me, Naki, and Leah, and we go down to San Francisco, and we're walking in, and I remember looking at the panel, and I was like, and you both were like, okay, so you're gonna need to say this, and you're gonna need to say that. And I remember stopping in the alley. We had parked in an alley, and we're walking down the alley, and I'm like, ladies, that is a panel of ladies. They're not going to want to hear me talk about everything, and you guys sit there quietly. That's just not going to work. And I remember looking at, especially Naki was like, so what do you, I'm like, you two are going to need to, like, I can fill in something or nudge things along, but if I just start talking, that's not going to be good for the process. And you two knocked it out of the park. Like, that was one of those things where I didn't know what I was going to say, because I knew I had to say that to both of you. But it was in that alley when we were walking down there. I was like, no, this is really going to be, you two are going to need to be the ones talking, because it's just not going to, there's not good optics at all for me to sit there and just be the mouthpiece. And you both did a fantastic job, and we got it. Your first one, that was 1 for 1. And then of course we were back at looking huge grants to, well, Leah got that one. Let's do this $85 million one from a federal grant, and it's due next week. So we kept trying we didn't understand it. Now we understand better the scope of it. But yeah, I do remember thinking, well, it's like for 4 or 5 days. I mean, how long could it take?
Yeah. I mean, it's a process. And again, a lot of grants the application process is similar. They kind of ask the similar questions. It's just a matter of, if you're like, you may write the best grant proposal ever, but if you just don't align perfectly with their mission or what they're looking for, you may not get funded. And that's of course hard to hear, but you just also have to know that, like, it doesn't necessarily mean your work isn't valuable. It's just you weren't a good fit for that particular foundation. But we've done pretty good. I think we've gotten almost all the grants that we applied for.
We got all the ones we needed because I'm always things happen for us, not to us. And some of the ones that, I think there's only one, but when we didn't get, I was looking at the deliverables, maybe that's not a bad thing. Right. But the success factor, the success ratio has been huge.
Well, that one grant we didn't get, I was like, oh man, I broke my streak. We were 10 for 10 and now.
Yeah, we were rolling along, but like I said, things happen for a reason. And then to your point, you don't learn as much from your successes sometimes as you do from not getting what you want and looking at it. So getting it back with a big splash of the big red ink, probably helps in the long run.
Yeah.
Well, that segues well into, what you had done, what you had given, and kind of what you ended up being in your major, and then what you wrote your master's thesis on at UC Davis. That kind of agriculture, horticulture, health in terms of what we're eating, is what you're here to talk about. So this is, I'll let you go ahead and tee it up. This is Leah talking about her thesis, her master's thesis, before she graduated from UC Davis.
So I graduated 2 years ago, and I was supposed to come on PBD right after I graduated to present this. And I am really good at avoiding microphones and cameras. And 2 years later, here we are. I'm going to share this because I did this research on the community here. And so I felt it's important to give what I learned and researched back to the community. For the sake of time, I'm going to talk kind of fast because there's a lot of info to get through. But my thesis is titled Exploring Food Literacy Among Samoans. And this is kind of a formal presentation. This is what I presented in my thesis.
To a board, a panel, right?
Yeah, to my thesis committee. And then I'll just, like I said, try to hurry through some of these slides. So a quick overview of what I'm going to talk about is my positionality, why this research is important. I'll go through the background of Samoa. I'll go over some of the research in the literature that's out there, quickly talk about the methods that I did, and then close out with the findings from my research. So positionality, it's just important to acknowledge positionality because I really tried to set aside my biases while conducting this research. So I do identify as biracial Samoan. I'm half Samoan, half white. I'm 30-something, middle class, college educated, fully employed with benefits. I was born here in the U.S. I grew up in a liberal white hippie town, spent part of my childhood in American Samoa. My father is a first-generation Samoan. I'm mostly vegetarian. I'm actually a chickatarian. I do eat chicken.
Chickatarian.
I do not speak the Samoan language. I have married into a Samoan family, and I am an active member of the Pacific Islander community. So, quick note: some terms I'm using, I'm shortening. So, NCDs are non-communicable diseases, which I'll define in a minute. NHPI, most of us know that, Native Hawaiian Pacific Islanders. And then when I talk about Oceania, that's referring to the geographic region in the Pacific Ocean where the Pacific Islands are located. So the goal of my research was to gain further understanding about the relationships between Samoans, their food choice, and culture. So some of the questions I was looking at was, what are some of the contributing factors to food selection? What does food literacy look like among this population? And what role does culture have in food selection? And why is this important? Well, from personal experience, I have seen a lot of family and friends and community members suffer from diet-related health issues. There is limited research on this field, especially in the U.S., limited research on food literacy, non-communicable diseases, and the influence of culture among Samoans in the U.S. So it's actually a more recent field of study. And then there's a need to contribute the Samoan perspective to research in hopes of finding ways to improve the lives of Samoans here in America. And then just the facts. It is well documented that Samoans currently have the highest rates of NCDs in the entire world.
Wow.
This we'll zip through. But when I'm talking about Samoa, I'm talking about independent Samoa, and then American Samoa is a U.S. territory, and the total population of both countries is about 200,000, and then the diaspora is almost equivalent population that exist outside of the islands. And I think I'll skip the history on this because we're probably familiar with that. So NHPIs in America. So today in the U.S., and this is all backed by research. The sightings are at the bottom of the slides. But Samoans are the second largest NHPI population after Native Hawaiians, and they mostly reside in Utah, California, Washington, Hawaii, Nevada, and Arkansas. And then here in California, 0.8% of the population are NHPIs, and that population grew by 29% between 2000 and 2017, making us one of the fastest growing ethnic groups in California. So 53% of the NHPIs in California reside here in the Bay Area, and Samoans make up the second largest of the NHPIs after Native Hawaiians. The data on NHPI population is, as we know, you guys have talked about this a lot, and you've done a lot of work on it, is not segregated, so it's hard to get information specific to Samoans. So the literature review, we'll try to go through this kind of quick, but this is just information I found out there, other articles, other research projects, and I really like this quote. If food and lifestyle choices are implicated in the high rate of NCDs affecting Pacifica peoples, then there is a need to understand their beliefs with regard to food.
Great point. Definitely applies to our community.
Yeah. So I talk about two different kinds of diets. The traditional diet is defined as being high in local cultural fresh food, the food that we love, taro, fish, breadfruit, pausami, and it's generally low in imported processed foods. Modern diets are defined as high in processed and or imported foods, such as fast food, rice, dairy, processed sugar, and low in traditional foods. So health literacy is the umbrella term that food literacy is under. So health literacy are studies the relationship between health status, health outcomes, and low literacy rates, and it's about the ability to understand and use information required to make health-related decisions. And it is important because, as research has shown, low health literacy rates have been linked to poor health, racial disparities, health disparities, income inequality, and they disproportionately affect immigrants and ethnic minorities. So food literacy, again, is under the umbrella of health literacy, and it's defined as being equipped with the skills, the knowledge, and behaviors required to navigate food systems to guide in healthy choices. It's a relatively newer area of research. One of the researchers out there defined it in 4 domains: planning your meals, managing your meals, preparing your meals, and eating your meals. And food selection is a component of food literacy and is what I'm focusing on in my research. And why is it important? Because understanding and improving food literacy could help reduce non-communicable diseases.
It makes a lot of sense because food is so important in our culture, right? Everything's based on events, what food is there. You can't go to a Samoan house without bringing something, which is going to be food. You know what I mean? So that's such a huge piece of our culture. This is very relevant to our health.
Yeah, and I'll talk a little bit about that with my interviews of how people preference Samoan foods because it is the connection to their culture. But yeah, this is a newer field. Like it's only started in the 1990s is when it first was found in the literature. And then in Oceania, it only showed up in the last 25 years in literature. So pretty
brand new.
So because it's newer, there's a lot of, it's limited in what's out there.
Makes sense. And where'd you get these pictures?
I took these pictures.
In Samoa.
In Samoa, when most of them were taken when we went in 2019. Okay, so NCDs, I keep saying that stands for non-communicable diseases, and those refer to chronic diseases. So these are non-transferable, non-contagious diseases, such as a result of a combination of genetic, physiological, environmental, and behavior factors such as stroke, heart attack, cancer, diabetes. All of these things we recognize in our community because they are prevalent. And research shows that if you are obese, you have an increased risk of these NCDs. And why is this important? Well, disproportionately, NCDs disproportionately affect low and middle income countries such as Samoa. And then Samoans have, like I said before, some of the highest rates of NCDs and obesity in the entire world. So a quick look at NCDs and Samoans. So in Samoa, Samoa is considered, according to, I believe this is the World Population Review in 2022, Samoa is considered the sixth fattest, next slide. The sixth fattest country in the entire world. And what's crazy is the 5 countries above that are all in Oceania as well. Yeah, I can't remember them specifically, but they were all
Tonga and
Pacific
Samoa are
Islanders.
always up.
They're right by
somewhere,
each other.
yeah.
And this is not an exhaustive list. I was just trying to be kind of concise here. But 81% of the deaths in Samoa are from NCDs. That's crazy because these are preventable.
Right.
And then here in Samoans in the U.S., Samoans have the highest rate of diabetes among the NHPI population. In Hawaii, Samoans have the lowest life expectancy of the state's 7 major ethnic groups. And here in California, only 40% of adult Samoans reported their health as very good, excellent, compared to the general population, in which 60% reported that.
So both of those numbers are shocking, right? Because the bar is 60%. Like it's barely over half. If you do just the whole United States, obviously only 40% of adult Samoans are identifying as being extremely, healthy. But even if you go all the way out to the country, it's only 60%. Like it affects us more, but there's a problem overall.
Yeah, for sure. And the other issue is that there's not many studies in the U.S. Most of the research from doing my thesis I found came out of Australia, New Zealand, a little bit out of American Samoa. And then the research that is done in the States is mostly out of Hawaii. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of room for research. So just quick note on globalization. It has a strong correlation there is a strong correlation between globalization and an increase in health issues across Oceania, and that the modernization of diets in Samoa has contributed to a rise in NCDs and obesity. So that's talking about trade, bringing processed foods into the country through globalization, white rice, white sugar, that kind of stuff, fast food. So Samoan diaspora and health. So the Samoan diaspora, the research has shown that there's a shift from traditional diets to modern diets, which I defined earlier. And some of these changes may be attributed to socioeconomic factors, cultural practices, and their length of stay abroad. And there's an increased risk for poor health due to poverty, sociocultural influences, and a lack of health literacy. And then NCDs are higher among the NHPI diaspora than in home countries, implying that migration exacerbates the issues of NCDs. So to define Samoa, many of us know this, but it's defined as a Samoan way of life. We have collectivistic value of supporting family and having respect for others, being humble, being hospitable, and then having church and religion as our foundation. Okay.
This may be my favorite picture.
Yeah, I love Nike has this one hanging in her house.
Beach.
So this is each bullet point here is a summary of a research article that I found. So I'm just going to zip through it. But this is talking about the influence of the culture, the influence of Samoa on our diets and food choices. So food was found to be a core component of Samoan culture as a way to preserve cultural identities and connect to their homeland, especially in the diaspora communities. The Samoa remains an influencer on food choice. Food is often given in excess, often beyond one's means, and we see that at cultural events all the time. The quality of food you contribute is a sign of respect. Health literacy is strongly influenced by culture, prioritizing social obligations over individual health, which is really interesting because the next one is lack of personal responsibility for health. And, so as we all know, a lot of NHPI communities are collectivistic societies. So that makes sense.
Right.
So there's a lot of barriers. So Samoa one article showed that Samoa is a barrier to changing health literacy and lifestyle, and that imported processed foods have obtained higher cultural value than traditional foods, replacing them in cultural exchanges in an effort to convey wealth.
So is a good example of that.
Exactly.
Right.
Like the Sprite instead of coconut, and the corned beef instead of the fresh pig, I think is what that's replacing.
Yeah, and there's biscuits and stuff. Like it's going into Western food, right? And it's just accepted. It's accepted as being a part of the culture, right? And I think that that's probably one of the ways that we ended up where we're at, and it would probably be the way that we get out of it, right? If it's cultural to do things, then we'll do them. But right now, it's cultural to do the things that we're doing, and it's gotten us where we've gotten in terms of our health. Our
it's also about
bad.
Yeah, and it's also about just access, right? We don't have access to a lot of those traditional foods,
right,
in this country at least. But yeah, okay. How am I doing on time?
We're fine.
Okay,
we're good.
So this is an article that inspired my thesis. So it was called Exploring Food Literacy Domains in the Adult Samoan Population. So this study aimed to explore food knowledge and behaviors of adult Samoans in Samoa by assessing these 4 domains of literacy. And it was the first of this kind done in the Pacific Islands, which is crazy because that was only 3 years ago. So very new. The method they used was an interview questionnaire of 150 participants, and they generally found that 87%, and again, we're talking about Samoans in Samoa, 87% of people include healthy food in their diet, 87% budget money for food, 68% know where to find nutrition labels, 43% use labels to inform their food choices, 90% agreed or strongly agreed that food impacts their health, and that there's a general lack of understanding of the Pacific Guidelines for Healthy Living, which is, I think, the equivalent of our USDA food pyramid.
It's in Samoa.
Samoa's in Samoa.
That survey. Yeah. Okay.
So, like I said, that article inspired my research. So my methods are similar. I used I'm not good at saying this word, phenomenological approach, which is a method.
Good job. Yeah, I'm good with that.
It's a method that examines and describes the lived experiences of individuals in their encounter with a particular phenomenon. And this was the most appropriate method because my research explores the phenomenon of how Samoans experience food, health, and culture here in America. Mena made this flyer for me. Thank you, Mena. So
beautiful.
My method, I did 36 question survey, which was sent out via link, text, or email. I asked culturally specific questions, collected demographic information. I had 3 criteria. You had to be 19 or older, live in one of the Bay Area counties, and identify as Samoan. And I had 147 people who responded to my survey. And from those, I had 5 interviews, in-person interviews, or sorry, not in-person, but 5 interviews with 3 questions each. So the analysis, the survey, you'll see, I reported on single variables, and then I would find single variables that were interesting and overlap them to see if there's any correlation. And then I reported on any correlations that I found most interesting, and then I would analyze those trends that stood out, and that's what I reported on. And then the interviews, I transcribed the audio recordings, extracted themes, pull quotes to support those themes. Okay, so
as she's pulling this together, we were waiting for a boat to take us off the island to the other island, and I saw the kids there, and I didn't know what they were doing. And then later you had taken the picture and you're like, no, they were playing Rochambeau. And I was like, oh man, I saw them doing something. I didn't know what it was. I didn't pay attention enough, but man, what a great picture.
I think I was squatting behind a tree trying to get the perfect shot for this. Okay. So this is the ending of my presentation, as I'm just going to go over the findings. So we're going to do a general overview of what I found, talk about some themes that came out, which include income and health, fast food, filling foods, connection to culture, and church. So general overview from what I found was that the Samoan the people that responded to my survey here in the Bay Area generally showed that they were food literate. They were able to identify healthy meal versus unhealthy meal. 94% of them knew where to locate the nutrition label on food packaging. 87% of them reported being somewhat or very familiar with the USDA food pyramid. I also found that there was some misconception about the recommended daily serving sizes. So about a quarter of the people answered that the daily USDA caloric intake recommendation is 1,000 calories higher
So if
than
it was 2,500, they said 3,500.
yeah.
Gotcha.
And then almost half of the people reported higher portion sizes as the correct recommended daily amount. That's
you
a
might
lot.
get scolded in a Samoan setting if you take a true portion and you have 3 portions, a portion of carbs, a portion of meat, and a portion of vegetables on your plate. People will be like, what is wrong with you? Fill that plate up.
And I also found that being food literate alone does not equal healthy food behavior. So 9% always use food labels when purchasing food. And then there was many people were aware that some Samoan food is unhealthy, but they eat it anyways. I think
Woolly PP.
we all do
Turkey
that.
tail.
Okay. So general overview continued. Many people were aware of the impacts of diet on their health. 80% of the people that took the survey agreed that eating processed foods high in salt and fat can be harmful to their health, and that there was some effort towards healthier diets. So 78% included healthy foods in what they eat, often or always. And then culture. There was a very strong, culture seemed to play a very strong role in choosing food. And so this was one of the graphs from one of my questions. One of the questions I asked was, have you ever experienced any of the following for any period of time? So we've got obesity, high blood pressure, diabetes, other hypertension, gout, heart disease, cancer.
So that's from the top to the bottom. Those are, as you read those the
Yeah.
bars. Okay.
And these are NCDs. These are non-communicable diseases. So of those 84 people who reported having diabetes, 62% of them rarely or never use nutrition labels when selecting food. However, of the 84 people who reported having diabetes, 62 of them plan to include healthy food often or always. This was kind of interesting that I did not find a strong correlation between income level and health issues. For example, if you're looking at obesity, 30% of those who have obesity make $80,000 a year or more. And then it's pretty much a quarter of people at each income level reported who have obesity reported similar. So this was interesting because a lot of the literature out there has found that correlations between low income and poor health. And to compare this to the National Health and Nutrition Survey of 2010, they found that obesity prevalence is generally similar at all income levels.
And normally you would think that achieved education is going to go along with the income.
Yes.
I mean, without just by guessing, the people who have degrees will probably make more, right? So that doesn't necessarily play out. Like what you're saying is that didn't really matter. You may have a degree and make 80,000, but you're actually more likely.
Yeah, exactly.
To suffer from obesity.
Fast food was another theme. So I asked a question. The question was about how often do you eat at fast food restaurants such as McDonald's, KFC, Wendy's? And 69% of the people reported eating fast food at least once a week. 57% of those people who eat fast food at least once a week reported having diabetes. 50% reported having gout, and 61% reported having diabetes. Sorry, the first one was obesity. Did I say that? Yeah. And then of those who reported always eating fast food, which was 13% of the people, 70% reported convenience as the most important factor to selecting their food. And 60% of those born in the U.S. eat fast food often. 40% of those born overseas rarely eat fast food. And that this was also an area that needed more research. And then, fun fact, the McDonald's in American Samoa in 2004 was reported as being the highest grossing McDonald's in the entire world.
Yeah.
It's right there by the airport.
Yep.
And, yeah.
In the one in Tafuna in American Samoa?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember when it opened, I remember hearing that it was breaking all kinds of records back when they first opened it.
Yeah. Whenever I go visit there, that's where my family likes to take me. Okay. Another theme I found was filling food. So this could be due to socioeconomic status, because maybe people reported not knowing when they would have their next meal, so they wanted to have filling foods. Mm-hmm. And top of the top 3 favorite foods that were reported were Samoan foods, filling foods, and foods that tasted good. And then from the interviews, a couple of quotes that I found very nice quotes were, filling food is most important because a lot of Samoans are poor and prioritize filling foods over nutrition foods like rice. Rice is a must. Another quote, I don't even care for an orange or to be healthy. I want something that's going to fill me up, something that's good, and beef is just tastier. We want something that's going to fill us up. And last quote, Samoan food is my favorite type of food because they taste good and are filling. So
there's a theme there.
yeah. Okay. And a lot of people reported having food as a connection to their culture because they're familiar with it. They grew up on it. It tastes good, gives them that nostalgia feeling, and there's a connection to their culture. A couple more quotes from my interviews. Samoans choose foods that they grew up with. Samoa is the mother, and that's the food. The milk she offered her babies, and her babies still like it. I don't have a favorite food. I just love Samoan food. And then this quote I really like. When we grew up as young Samoans in Samoa, these are the foods we grew up eating. There's a special way, a Samoan way of making food, and that is to me the cultural connection that I have established with food. It has become part of how we present our cultural routines, which we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, and I think the piece of that American Indian, the Native Americans have their levels of obesity and diabetes are similar to Pacific Islanders.
Yeah.
And I remember watching a video of an interview, and they were talking to a young Native American. She's like, yeah, but my grandma ate fry bread. Like, I know it's not healthy for me, but the traditional foods aren't healthy for me. And the interviewer was saying, no, go back 2 more generations. So go past the fry bread, because they got the fry bread from the Europeans moving in. Go back 150 years and then look at what the traditional indigenous food was. That's healthy.
Mm-hmm.
But now we're getting so many generations away from that the Native Americans are looking at their grandparents that were making unhealthy foods, right? So that's the piece with, Samoan food is go back to the point before the processed foods came in.
Yeah.
And look at those. Those are healthy foods.
The traditional diet is healthy.
Right.
This was a question that I asked when attending a Samoan cultural function. What are the 3 foods you are likely to take? So the larger the word in these pictures, the more frequently it was reported. So as you can see, the most visible words are meat, starch like taro, beef, pork, chicken, potato. I'm not seeing any fruits or vegetable dishes up there. So this just reiterates a food preference for Samoan dishes. Okay, this one is interesting, and we're almost done. So this is sources of information on health and food. So I asked 2 questions. What is your primary source for learning about healthy foods? And what is your primary source for learning about healthy practices? The top 2 here for both questions was social media and the doctor, is where people tend to get their information. But what I found fascinating, which I'll talk about in a second, go all the way to the bottom, and you see church is listed as the least used resource for information. And we are a culture that really centers in church. And so I'll talk about that in a second, but I just thought that was very interesting.
Which is interesting because when we did the study groups, right? The focus groups, church, community leaders, and church, community leaders, community organizations, and elders was the answer when we did our focus groups. But
for tobacco use, yeah. Right?
For the tobacco, the tobacco focus groups. Where do they want to get information and resources from? Where do they want to hear those from? They want to hear, and those groups actually said church, community-based organizations, community leaders, and elders. That was the recurring theme in those, but they're very different here.
Yeah, and I was surprised. So 55% of the people that took the survey reported that they are affiliated with the Samoan church, but like I just said, it's the least common source of health information. And yes, here we go. Final slide. So implications of the research is that church is a highly underutilized source for health interventions, which is interesting because the literature out there shows that church has been proven over and over again to be an effective platform for health intervention and education. So, there is further research that needs to be done in this area, but just interesting to note for health interventions. And then there's a disconnection between food and health literacy and healthy food choice. A lot of people have the skills or have the knowledge, but they don't use the skills to make healthy food choices. And that culture plays a significant role in the food that they choose.
Interesting that Aita Oto, 2007.
Yes, I quoted her several times in my thesis.
Dr. Nia Aita Oto.
And then just this quote kind of sums everything up for me. Is unless the Samoa changes, the NCDs will never change.
And that's what I was saying earlier. The culture is what got us where we're at. It would be the culture is the vehicle that will change it, right? Being told that this is not healthy food isn't going to change it. It's going to be when the culture changes with different foods and those kind of things, then I think these will change. But that's the hard thing. I mean, the bad thing is that culture got us here to that degree, right? And culture is the vehicle. The good news is culture is the vehicle that can get us out of it.
Yeah. And I mean, it's hard to change culture. And like I said, there's a lot of room here for more research on how we influence the culture to impact our food choices. And maybe that means introducing kids to healthy foods at an early age so that they're familiar with it. As you saw, some of the participants reported, they choose foods because they're familiar with it. So maybe if they grow up on more fruits and vegetables or whatever, they will eat more of those naturally as an adult because they're familiar with it. Maybe we decrease food portion sizes. Maybe we decrease the value of processed foods in cultural ceremonies. I don't know. This is,
Right. There's a discussion. That's what needs to be on the table, because I think that the problem isn't the answer, right? The problem is accepting the answer. Like, we know what the answer is eat healthier, right? It's accepting the answer. Like, how do we change the way that we eat? Because behaviors are what lead to metrics. Behavior leads to obesity, leads to all the NCDs, right? It's habitual behavior. How do we change the behavior? That's the hard part. That's fascinating stuff. So how long did it take you to gather the information?
Gosh, I think maybe 2 months.
2 months. And then you're crunching after you get all the information. How long does it take you from there to get to the point you're presenting it to your thesis?
This was 2 years ago. I can't remember that far back. I think they give you maybe 6 months from start to finish.
So that is actually a fairly fast process. If you're looking at like crunching all that data, getting all the information together, putting it into that format, you're moving pretty fast. Was it stressful did you feel the I gotta get it done in 6 months, or is that just how long it ended up taking you?
I think I was on an accelerated path. I was actually the only person in my cohort that worked full time, and I was the only person that defended their thesis on time. And part of that is because I didn't want to pay another term or two of tuition.
I don't want to be here next semester.
Yeah, and I needed to just get back to focusing on work and stuff. But so I accelerated it. I kind of buckled down and didn't leave the house there for maybe a month or two, and just researched all weekend, every day after work. Yeah.
Well, focusing on a goal and getting it done has never been a weak spot for you. You've always, if there's something that you need done, and that's another thing that we did not go over. One of the roles that Leah plays for PBD is corralling Naki and I in together to make sure that we actually get things done that we say we're going to get done. The meetings with Leah help us get structured and actually get to the finish line with a lot of stuff, because we start things and then we're supposed to do 8 of them, and then 3 months later we're overdue and we only have 6 of them. So Leah lets us know, where's my 2? I need my 2 of these, and we get those things done. So it's hopefully this wasn't too painful, because when you feel better, we're going to ask you back to talk more about Flip It Girl and all the different things, probably being a young mother. Soon we'll talk to you about those things, but I wanted to thank you for coming in tonight. I know that you probably want to get home and rest, and the work that you're doing is actually giving me some ideas. I'll probably talk to you off air of things that we should do. There's Miss Naki right there. Naki moly. In the
Hi,
air.
Nike.
She's in the air.
Wow.
Checking in from 30,000 feet in the wing tube coming north from San Diego.
Hi, Mo.
And there's Mr. Molly. Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
well, thank you for having me. And I know I went a little bit over time.
No, that's a good thing about having it be our show. We can go 3 hours or we can go half an hour, as long as we want or as short as we want. Great information. And like I said, it just puts a lot of thought in the mind of like, if we can do some things in terms of like gardening and, make that part of the process and be proud of our gardens that have taro or, these things in them. Probably something we can, we could make a dent in.
I mean, if anything, like I said, there's not a lot of research on this in the States. So if anything, anybody that wants to go to grad school, get a PhD and, continue on this research, there's so many areas that need more research. And it's a very interesting field to be in. Maybe
there'll be 2 Dr. Faleavas at that house.
I'm good being a master.
Got to keep a variety of the higher education degrees on the wall in the Faleava home. All right. So normally this is Naki's piece, so I'm going to fumble through this. Thank you, Leah, Flip It Girl. Follow her on flip_it_girl with a U on Instagram. We will be congratulating her soon. And thank you for being in, sharing your time. Congratulations on your master's degree. And congratulations for being successful in herding cats for PBD and getting me and Naki to get things done. We appreciate you. That's it. We're here every Thursday at 6 p.m. Come back and Faika with us.